The fool opened his eyes wide, staring straight at the black roof made of thatch and mud. The old cotton quilt covering his body had turned a deep yellow, its original appearance long gone, faintly giving off a musty smell. Right beside him lay another person, his second brother, Hanju, sleeping soundly, with steady snoring rising and falling from his body from time to time. About half a zhang away from the bed was a yellow mud wall. Because of long years of wear, several thin, barely noticeable cracks had appeared on it. Through these fissures, faintly came Mother Han's nagging complaints, occasionally mixed with Father Han's dry tobacco pipe, emitting pada sucking sounds. The fool slowly closed his already slightly dry eyes, forcing himself to fall into deep sleep as soon as possible. He knew very well that if he did not obediently sleep, he would not be able to get up early tomorrow, and thus would not be able to go into the mountains with his companions to gather firewood. The fool's surname was Han, and his given name was Li. Such a proper-sounding name was not something his parents could have come up with. It was given by old Uncle Zhang in the village, in exchange for 2 coarse grain-steamed corn buns from his father. When he was young, old Uncle Zhang had spent several years as an accompanying reading boy for a wealthy family in the city, and he was the only literate person in the village. More than half of the children in the village had their names given by him. Han Li was called the Fool by the villagers, but he was not truly foolish or stupid. On the contrary, he was one of the smartest children in the village. However, like other village children, except for his family, he rarely heard anyone formally call him by his name, Han Li. Instead, the nickname the Fool had accompanied him ever since. The reason he was given the nickname the Fool was simply because there was already another child in the village called Stupid. This was nothing unusual. Other children in the village were also called things like Doggy or Second Egg, and these names were not necessarily any more pleasant than the Fool. Therefore, although Han Li did not like this nickname, he could only keep comforting himself in this way. Han Li looked unremarkable on the outside, with dark skin, just an ordinary peasant child. But deep inside, he was far more mature than children of his age. From a young age, he had longed for the prosperity of the outside world, dreaming that one day he could leave this tiny village and see the world that old Uncle Zhang often spoke of. Of course, Han Li had never dared to tell anyone else about this idea. Otherwise, it would surely have startled the villagers. How could a snot-nosed little kid have such an idea that even adults would not dare to easily imagine? One must know that other children of similar age to Han Li were still only chasing chickens and dogs all over the village, let alone having such a strange thought about leaving their homeland. Han Li came from a family of 7, with 2 elder brothers, an elder sister, and a younger sister. He was the 4th child and had just turned 10 this year. Life in the household was very hard. They rarely had meat dishes throughout the year, and the whole family hovered around the subsistence line. At that moment, Han Li was in a drowsy state, half asleep and half awake, still holding on to one lingering thought. When going up the mountain, he must help his most beloved younger sister gather more of the red berries she liked to eat. At noon the next day, when Han Li was walking under the scorching sun, carrying a bundle of firewood half a person tall on his back and a cloth bag full of berries in his arms, heading home from the mountains, he had no idea that a guest had already arrived at his home, one who would change the course of his entire life. This distinguished guest was a very close relative, his 3rd paternal uncle. It was said that he was the head manager of a tavern in a nearby small town and was considered an impressive figure in his parents' eyes. In nearly 100 years of the Han family's history, this 3rd uncle might have been the only relative with any real status. Han had only seen this 3rd uncle a few times when he was very young. His elder brother's apprenticeship under an old blacksmith in the city had been arranged by this very uncle, who also often sent people to bring food and daily necessities to his parents. He took very good care of their family, so Han had a favorable impression of him, and knew that although his parents never said aloud, they were deeply grateful. His eldest brother was the pride of the family. It was said that as an apprentice blacksmith, he was provided with food and lodging, and even earned 30 copper coins a month. Once he officially mastered the craft and was hired, his income would be even higher. Whenever his parents spoke of his eldest brother, they became radiant with pride, as if transformed into different people. Although Han Li was still young, he deeply admired him and had already decided on his ideal future job: to be taken in as an apprentice by some craftsman in a small town and become a respectable man who made a living with his skills. So when Han Li saw his third uncle, dressed in brand-new silk clothing, with a chubby round face and a small mustache, he became extremely excited. After placing the firewood properly behind the house, he went to the front room and shyly paid his respects to third uncle, obediently greeting him, "Hello, third uncle," then stood quietly to the side, listening to his parents chatting with him. Third uncle smiled and looked at Han Li, sizing him up. He praised him a few times with words like well-behaved and sensible, then turned to talk to his parents about the purpose of his visit. Although Han Li was still young and could not fully understand everything third uncle said, he still grasped the general meaning. It turned out that the tavern where third uncle worked belonged to a martial arts sect called the Seven Mysteries Sect. This sect was divided into outer sect and inner sect. Not long ago, third uncle had officially become an outer sect disciple and was now qualified to recommend children aged 7 to 12 to take part in the examination for inner sect disciples of the Seven Mysteries Sect. The Seven Mysteries Sect held its entrance examination for inner sect disciples once every 5 years, and it would begin next month. This somewhat shrewd third uncle, who had no children of his own, naturally thought of Han Li, who was of the right age. Han's father, who had always been honest and plain, felt uncertain upon hearing unfamiliar terms like martial world and sect. Unable to make up his mind, he picked up his dry tobacco pipe and took several heavy puffs with pada sounds, then sat there silently without saying a word. In third uncle's words, the Seven Mysteries Sect was one of the most powerful and prestigious sects within hundreds of miles. As long as one became an inner sect disciple, not only could one freely learn martial arts and never worry about food or drink, but one would also receive more than one tael of silver every month as pocket money. Moreover, even those who failed the examination still had a chance to become outer sect members like third uncle, handling business affairs outside for the Seven Mysteries Sect. When he heard that he might receive a tael of silver every month and possibly become a respectable person like third uncle, Han's father finally made up his mind and agreed. Seeing that Han's father had agreed, third uncle was very pleased. He left behind several taels of silver and said he would come back in a month to take Han Li away. During this time, they should feed Han Li well and nourish his body so he could pass the examination. Afterward, third uncle said goodbye to Han's father, patted Han Li's head, and returned to the city. Although Han Li did not fully understand what third uncle had said, he did understand that going to the city meant earning a lot of money. His long-cherished wish seemed about to come true, and he was so excited that he could not sleep for several nights in a row. A little over a month later, third uncle arrived in the village on time to take Han Li away. Before leaving, Han's father repeatedly reminded him to be honest, to endure and yield when necessary, and not to argue with others. Han's mother told him to take care of his health and eat and sleep well. In the carriage, watching his parents' figures gradually fade into the distance, Han Li bit his lip tightly, forcing himself not to let the tears in his eyes fall. Although he had always been more mature than other children since childhood, he was still a 10-year-old boy after all. This was his first time leaving home, and he felt a sense of sadness and uncertainty. In his young heart, he secretly resolved that once he earned enough money, he would return immediately and never be separated from his parents again. Han Li never imagined that after this departure, the amount of wealth would become meaningless to him, and that he would instead step onto an extraordinary path of immortality and embark on his own journey of cultivation. This was a small town. Though calling it a town was more accurate, it was really just a slightly larger village. Its name was Green Ox Town, and only those uneducated locals living in nearby mountain ravines would insist on calling it Green Ox City. This was what Xun'er, who had worked as a gatekeeper for over 10 years, thought to himself. Green Ox Town was indeed small. There was only one main street running east-west, Green Ox Street, and only one inn, the Green Ox Inn. Located at the western end of the elongated town, travelers who did not want to sleep in the wild had no choice but to stay there. At that moment, a carriage that looked like it had traveled a long distance entered Green Ox Town from the west. It sped past the entrance of the Green Ox Inn without stopping and continued all the way to the other end of town, stopping only in front of Spring Fragrance Tavern. Spring Fragrance Tavern was not large and was somewhat old, but it had an antique charm. It was lunchtime, and the tavern was nearly full, almost every seat taken. From the carriage stepped a chubby man with a small mustache and a dark-skinned boy of about 10 years old. The man led the boy straight into the tavern in a very casual manner. Some regular customers recognized the chubby man and knew he was the tavern's shopkeeper, Fatty Han, but no one recognized the boy. "Old Han, this dark kid really looks like you. Don't tell me he's your illegitimate son you have behind your wife's back," someone joked suddenly. This remark caused everyone nearby to burst into laughter. "Bah, this is my nephew from my own family. Of course he looks somewhat like me," the chubby man said proudly without getting angry. These two were none other than Han Li, who had just arrived in the town after 3 days on the road, and his third uncle, known to others as Fatty Han. Fatty Han greeted a few regular customers, then led Han Li to the back of the tavern and into a secluded small courtyard. "Shao Li, rest well in this room and recover your energy. Once the inner sect steward arrives, I'll call you over. I need to go out for a moment to attend to some guests." Fatty Han pointed at the wing room in the courtyard and said kindly to him. After speaking, he hurriedly turned and walked out. At the doorway, he still seemed a little uneasy and added, "Don't run around. There are too many people in the town. Don't get lost. It's best you don't leave the courtyard." Seeing Han Li obediently agree, he finally left in peace. After Han Li saw his third uncle leave the room, he felt very tired and immediately collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep, showing no sign of shyness or fear like an ordinary child. In the evening, a servant brought him food. Although it wasn't lavish fish and meat, it was still quite tasty. After he finished eating, another servant came in, took away the empty dishes, and only then did his third uncle leisurely return. "How is it? Do the dishes suit your taste? Are you a bit homesick?" "Yes, a little." Han Li looked very obedient. His third uncle seemed quite satisfied with his answer and then chatted with him about everyday matters, boasting about interesting people and events he had experienced. Gradually, Han Li relaxed and began to talk and laugh with him. And so, 2 days passed. On the third day, after Han Li finished dinner and was waiting for his third uncle to tell him more Jianghu stories, another carriage stopped in front of the tavern. The carriage was entirely painted in glossy black lacquer. The horses pulling it were rare, top-grade yellow horses. Most striking of all was a small black, triangular flag on the carriage frame embroidered with the character Xian, edged in silver and red, naturally exuding an indescribable aura of mystery. Anyone who had traveled within hundreds of miles and had experience in the martial world would recognize that this meant one of the two dominant forces in the region, the Seven Mysteries Sect, had important figures arriving locally. The Seven Mysteries Sect, also known as the Seven Ultimates Sect, was founded 200 years ago by the famed Seven Ultimates Lord. It once dominated Mirror Prefecture for decades, and even extended its influence into neighboring provinces, becoming widely renowned across the Yu Kingdom. However, after the death of the Seven Ultimates Lord, its power declined sharply, and it was jointly pushed out of Mirror Prefecture's capital, Mirror City, by other sections 100 years ago. The sect was forced to relocate to the most remote part of Mirror Prefecture, Rainbow Cloud Mountain, where it settled and gradually became a third-rate local power. As the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The Seven Mysteries Sect, after all, was once a major sect, and its potential remained considerable. After arriving at Rainbow Cloud Mountain, it quickly took control of more than a dozen small towns, including Green Ox Town, and had 3,000 to 4,000 disciples under its command, making it one of the true two regional overlords. The only force locally able to contend with the Seven Mysteries Sect was the Wild Wolf Gang. The Wild Wolf Gang was originally a group of bandits within Mirror Prefecture who specialized in burning, killing, and looting. After repeated government crackdowns, part of them surrendered and were taken in, while the rest formed the Wild Wolf Gang. However, the bandits' ruthless, bloodthirsty nature and willingness to kill and fight survived intact, which is why the Seven Mysteries Sect often found itself at a disadvantage in conflicts with them. Although the Wild Wolf Gang controlled more towns, it was poor at governance, and its level of prosperity was far inferior to the towns under the Seven Mysteries Sect. The Wild Wolf Gang coveted several of the more prosperous territories under the sect and frequently provoked conflicts between the two sides in recent times. This gave the current sect master of the Seven Mysteries Sect a severe headache and also became the main reason the sect has repeatedly expanded recruitment in recent years. A thin man in his 40s jumped down from the carriage. He moved with agility, clearly no weak fighter, and seemed very familiar with the place as he strode directly toward Han Li's room. When Han Li's third uncle saw him, he immediately stepped forward respectfully and bowed. "Guardian Wang, why have you personally come to lead the group?" "Umph." Guardian Wang let out a cold snort, his face full of arrogance. "The roads have been unstable lately, so security must be strengthened. The elders ordered me to personally escort them." "Enough nonsense. This child is the one you recommended?" Yes, this is my nephew. I hope Guardian Wang will take care of him on the journey." Seeing the man's somewhat impatient expression, Fatty Han quickly took out a heavy pouch from his body and discreetly handed it over. Guardian Wang weighed the pouch in his hand, and his expression eased slightly. "Fatty Han, you're quite good at handling things. I'll take care of your nephew on the way. It's getting late, so let's set off quickly." The smell inside the carriage was clearly not pleasant. That was understandable. Although the carriage should only have held a dozen people, nearly 30 children were squeezed inside. Even though children are smaller than adults, it still made the carriage unbearably crowded. Han Li cleverly shrank his thin body into a corner inside the carriage, secretly observing the other children inside. The children who had come to take the entrance examination were clearly divided into 3 groups based on their clothing, appearance, and background. The first group was the richly dressed young noble seated in the center of the carriage, surrounded by most of the other children. That young man was named Wu Yan. He was 13 years old and the oldest among them. He had originally exceeded the age limit, but because his elder cousin was married to a powerful figure within the Seven Profound Sect, the age restriction naturally no longer mattered. The Wu family ran a martial arts hall and was fairly wealthy. He had practiced some basic boxing and kicking skills since childhood. Although they were not particularly impressive, they were more than enough to deal with children like Han Li, who only had brute strength and had never learned martial arts. Clearly, people like Wu Yan, coming from wealthy and powerful families and knowing a few martial skills, naturally became the big brother figure among most of the children in the carriage. The second group consisted of the children surrounding Wu Yan. They came from all kinds of backgrounds, some from shopkeeping families, some from laboring households, some from artisan families, and so on. But they all shared one trait. They had grown up in towns and had, to varying degrees, learned to read people and act according to advantage from the adults around them. As a result, they all clustered around Wu Yan, calling him Young Master Wu and Brother Wu, one after another. Wu Yan was clearly already used to it and greatly enjoyed these titles. The final group was like Han Li. These children all came from remote and impoverished countryside areas where families lived off the land. They were very poor. This group was the smallest in the carriage, only 5 or 6 children. They were mostly timid, afraid to speak loudly, and only watched as others laughed and talked freely, forming a sharp contrast with the noisy, lively children. The carriage set out from Green Ox Town and sped westward all the way. Along the way, it passed through several places and picked up more children. Finally, on the evening of the 5th day, they arrived at Rainbow Cloud Mountain, the main headquarters of the Seven Mysteries Sect. As soon as they got off the carriage, all the children were deeply captivated by the breathtaking sunset scenery of Rainbow Cloud Mountain. Only when Guardian Wang urged them did they snap back to reality and continue forward. Rainbow Cloud Mountain was originally called Phoenix Fall Mountain. Legend said that in ancient times, a five-colored phoenix once descended here and transformed into this mountain. Later, people discovered that at sunset the mountain was extraordinarily beautiful, like glowing clouds filling the sky. So it was renamed Rainbow Cloud Mountain. Of course, after the Seven Mysteries Sect took control of the mountain, outsiders were no longer allowed to freely enjoy its scenery. Rainbow Cloud Mountain was the second largest mountain in Mirror Prefecture. Aside from the Hundred Wilds Mountain, it covered the widest area, with mountain ranges stretching over more than 10 miles. It contained over a dozen peaks of varying size, each extremely steep, and all were occupied by different branches of the Seven Mysteries Sect. The main peak, Sunset Peak, was especially perilous, towering and sheer, with only a single path from base to summit. After establishing their headquarters there, the Seven Mysteries Sect set up 13 sentry posts, both overt and hidden, along this path at key strategic points, making it virtually foolproof and completely secure. Hanli walked forward with the crowd while observing his surroundings. Suddenly, the group ahead stopped, and a hearty voice rang out. "Brother Wang, why are you only arriving now? You're 2 days later than scheduled. Hall Master you. We were delayed on the road." "Thank you for your concern," Guardian Wang said respectfully, bowing to an elderly man with a red face standing at the front, his previously domineering demeanor completely replaced with flattery. "Which batch of disciples is this?" "The 17th batch." Hall Master Yu glanced at Han Li and the others with a condescending air. "Send them to Guest Serenity Courtyard. Let them rest well for the night. Tomorrow morning, the selection of qualified disciples will begin. Those who fail should be sent down the mountain early so as not to break the mountain rules." "Yes, Hall Master Yu." Walking up the stone steps, all the children were excited, but no one dared speak loudly. Although they were young, they all knew this was the place that would determine their future fate. Guardian Wang led the way, smiling and greeting people he met along the road. It was clear he had many acquaintances within the sect and was quite well connected. Most of the people they encountered wore cyan brocade robes, carrying sabers or swords. Occasionally, some unarmed individuals had bulging waists, as if concealing something. From their mannerisms, it was clear they were all highly skilled and capable martial artists. Han Li and the others were brought to a lower mountain peak. At the summit, there was a cluster of earthen houses where they stayed for the night. In his sleep that night, Han Li dreamed that he was dressed in fine brocade clothing, holding a golden sword, and possessed peerless martial arts. He brutally beat up the blacksmith's son from his village, the one he had never been able to defeat before, feeling immensely heroic and satisfied. Even after waking up the next morning, he was still savoring the dream. In the morning, Guardian Wang did not allow them to have breakfast. He directly led everyone down the mountain to a large slope covered in bamboo. There, Hall Master Yu, whom they had seen yesterday, and several other unfamiliar young men were already waiting. Hall Master Yu stood before the group and said loudly, "Listen carefully, everyone. Follow the path through the bamboo forest, and you will reach the bone-refining cliff of the Seven Profound Sect. The first section is the bamboo forest, then a cliff face, and finally a mountain precipice. Only those who can reach the top of the cliff will be able to enter the Seven Profound Sect. If you cannot arrive before noon, you will not become formal disciples, but if you show potential, you may be taken in as registered disciples." Hanli naturally did not understand what registered disciples meant. He only knew that he just had to move forward and climb the mountain. He looked ahead and saw a not too steep slope, with many long bamboo stalks of varying thickness growing on it. It didn't seem too difficult to climb. Hanli glanced at the others. He did not want to lose to children his own age, and the atmosphere among the other children also suddenly grew tense. Hall Master Yu looked at the rising sun and said, "It's about time. Let's set off. Don't be afraid. Your senior brothers will be behind you to protect you and won't let you get into danger." Hanli turned back to look at those young men behind him. So these were called senior brothers. They were probably the sect's previously recruited disciples. If he joined as well, would he also be able to wear such impressive clothing? While he was idly thinking, Hanli noticed that the other children had already rushed into the bamboo forest. Seeing this, he quickly followed them. The bamboo forest was quite vast. As soon as more than 30 children rushed in, they immediately scattered. Behind Hanli followed a tall, thin senior brother, who wore a cold expression and said nothing, staying closely behind him. Hanli felt a little afraid and did not dare speak to him. He simply lifted his feet, lowered his body, and slowly advanced along the slope. At first, the bamboo forest did not seem difficult, but after walking for a long time, it became exhausting. His legs grew heavier and heavier. Gradually, Hanli had to grab bamboo stalks with one hand just to move forward, so as to conserve strength. After persisting for quite a while, Hanli was truly exhausted. He finally found a dirt mound and sat down heavily, gasping for breath. Taking a moment to rest, Hanli glanced back at the tall, thin senior brother. Even though the terrain was extremely steep, that senior brother stood motionless, not a speck of dust on him, as straight as the bamboo itself, quietly watching him not far below. Seeing the senior brother's cold gaze, Hanli felt a little afraid again and quickly turned his head back. He then heard continuous gasping sounds coming from ahead, realizing that others who had climbed faster than him were also resting. After staying in place a little longer, Hanli hurried forward again. The slope became even steeper, and Hanli's strength was steadily fading. To avoid losing his footing, he had no choice but to bend over and use both hands and feet to climb. Fortunately, his clothes were sturdy. Otherwise, his knees and joints would have been badly worn through. Finally, he was about to leave the dense bamboo forest. However, the final stretch felt increasingly difficult. Rocks on the ground became more and more frequent, while bamboo grew scarcer. Hanli could no longer pull himself forward using bamboo stalks. The last part of the journey could only be described as inching forward step by step. After exiting the bamboo forest, a vast scene opened up before him. Straight ahead was an enormous rock wall. Several thin figures were already slowly climbing upward, each followed by a senior brother dressed similarly. Hanli no longer hesitated and immediately ran toward the rock wall. The cliff's surface of the giant rock was made of layered sedimentary stone, heavily weathered. Some areas crumbled at a touch, while other fragments remained sharp and jagged. In just a short time, Hanli's hands were covered in wounds. His elbows and knees had also torn through his clothing, and the exposed flesh was cut in several places. Although the wounds were small, fine stone debris lodged inside them, making the pain even more intense. The leading few had already climbed far ahead. Thinking of his family and his third uncle's instructions, Hanli could only grit his teeth in his heart and continue his arduous climb upward. Before setting off, Hanli's father and third uncle had already warned him that the entrance examination would be extremely difficult, and that if he could not persevere to the very end, it would be impossible to join the 7 Mysteries Sect. At this moment, Hanli no longer really cared whether he could join the 7 Mysteries Sect or not. Instead, a fierce stubbornness rose within him. An unyielding breath seemed to clog his chest, and he was determined to catch up with the others. Hanli lifted his head with effort and looked ahead. The person currently leading was Wu Yan. After all, Wu Yan was more than a year older than Hanli and had practiced some martial arts, making him far stronger than the other children. It was not surprising that he was at the front. Hanli then glanced back a few times and saw many figures still moving behind him. He took a deep breath and pushed himself forward again, accelerating his pace. He exerted every last bit of strength he had, yet still could not close the gap with those in front. His body grew heavier by the moment. By the time the sun was approaching the middle of the sky, Wu Yan had already climbed to the end of the stone cliff. There, a sheer vertical cliff over 30 zhang high loomed. From the top of the cliff hung more than a dozen hemp ropes, each tied with fist-sized knots along its length. Wu Yan was currently climbing one of them, slowly and steadily making his way toward the cliff top. Watching Wu Yan ahead of him, Hanli felt a wave of discouragement. He knew he could not possibly catch up to the leading few, and there simply was not enough time left. As soon as that thought arose, A sudden searing pain erupted from the injured areas of his elbows and knees. His limbs went weak. The hand gripping the rock trembled violently, and his entire body nearly slipped downward. He hurriedly pressed himself tightly against the stone cliff, not daring to move at all. After a moment, he calmed himself down. Reaching out again, he grabbed a protruding rock edge and tugged on it a few times. It felt fairly secure, and only then did he feel reassured. Hanli subconsciously turned his head and saw that the senior brother behind him was crouching slightly with both arms spread wide, clearly ready to protect him. Only after confirming he was safe did the senior brother slowly straighten up again. Hanli felt a surge of gratitude. If he had truly fallen, all his earlier effort would have been wasted. After resting briefly, he continued to move forward slowly, climbing toward the hemp ropes hanging from the cliff. He finally reached one of the unoccupied hemp ropes. By then, the sun was almost directly overhead, with less than half an hour left before noon. At that moment, Wu Yin had already reached the cliff top and was looking down. Just as Han Li reached the base of the rope, he happened to see Wu Yin. Wu Yin raised his arm, extended his little finger toward those below, and lightly gestured twice. Then he burst into loud laughter and turned to leave. Han Li felt a surge of anger and immediately grabbed the hemp rope to begin climbing. However, by this point, Han Li had no strength left in his entire body. He could barely even hold onto the knots on the rope. After great difficulty, he managed to climb onto the final knot at the end of the rope and sat down heavily. His entire body felt soft and powerless, unable even to move a single finger. He strained to turn his head and saw that some of the other children were still sitting against the stone cliff behind him, gasping heavily for breath. It seemed they had also exhausted their last bit of strength. Han Li could only smile bitterly in his heart. He had clearly underestimated this test. Fortunately, he was not the last one. He then turned to look at the cold senior brother again. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to push himself a little further and climb higher. Although he would definitely not be able to reach the top before noon, staying still like this would be too embarrassing. Han Li stretched out his somewhat stiff hands and used the little strength he had just recovered to slowly move upward along the knots. However, at this point his hands were already completely uncooperative and he could no longer grip the rope properly. After struggling for a while, he still made no progress.